how do you see things happening? And I mean, are you seeing that consulting space? Are you guys gobbling up the smaller players, or are you also facing problems from the bigger players? And how are you reacting to it? First of all, do you see that, and do you see some changes from organization, some coping mechanisms, or some strategies that you have in place to take care of such kind of power issues?
So, just a disclaimer, I work in PwC, but my views are purely personal today. And since you are asking very strategic questions,
so you can deflect it. I mean, if you want, you can talk general. I mean, that's,
so consulting, first, it's more by very nature of consulting. It's people-driven, and there are huge angles, and it's a service industry at the end of the day, where consistency to be maintained is a very big challenge. Consistent service delivery. So while there have been consolidations in consulting, and professional services firm, some of us are here today, I think, in that. So professional services firms have gone through their own cycles of, I think it's a heavily merger-oriented industry. Whether it is the team grabs, or it is entire practice grab, or even company grabs. So, the name of consulting companies itself, have been in like 4, 5 phases, right? Because of that only, they merged and merged and merged. And then ultimately, after a certain time, they decided to rebrand. And while the name looks very small, but actually there are so many partners or acquired entities there, right? But despite that, there is huge competition. So I don't think capital is the only play. It's not. Or is it a brand? Or is it knowledge? I think fairly democratized, all these things. Capital availability is quite there. People were, at one point of time, people used to say, in services, especially consulting, whether there will be any private equity player who will come. But there are now 4 instances, at least in globally, where private equities are there. So the entire business models are changing, right? So whether it is capital, whether it is brand, I think anyone who is under an impression, I think you've said very good thing, that power is given, right? So anyone who's under an impression that I have capital, I have government connections, or maybe I'm not talking about consulting, in general, in the industry, I think that person is bound to fail. That organization is bound to fail. Because power is actually given. If that was not the thing, if people would not have grabbed the things, the top 20 firms in the world today, they were not top 20. 30 years back, these firms are not there actually. And it's not only top 20 across the world. Europe and US GDP was same actually. Not 100 years back, just few years back. And it has changed. So I think it is all about the market, how the market structures are, and how whether government is there or not there. Whether capital is there or not there. I think these people have innovated, and at large scale. So my day job is actually to work with entrepreneurs, promoters, owners of the business, and help solve their funding needs, financing, the capital needs primarily. Right? And I'm really heartened to see that people who were not existent 15 years back, no family background, nothing, they are doing excellent today. And there are also stories which are 3 generations of wealth and stagnated, or maybe collapsed. So that, I think, to that extent, whatever my limited experiences of consulting and interacting with people for solving their funding needs, I think the right to win in a particular business becomes very big thing. Very big thing. Whether it is a right aggregation of the team, whether it is the right system, whether it is right mindset. So right to win creates a difference, and it's visible now, not only in small scale or mid-sized industries, even our top 20 companies, of course, I will not comment about our geo fully angle, but still our top 20 companies are very different, which were there 50 years back. So there have been good examples of entrepreneurship which have scaled up, substantially scaled up. Of course, I agree, setting up a 50 crore business, 20 crore business is easy, fairly easy. You can maybe regional, local, you can do that. But a 5,000 crore business is not easy. 1,000 crore business is not easy. And that shows the longevity of business also and creates employment. So So those good thing is we have hundreds of those examples today in India, right? And whether it is in consulting, services, manufacturing. Of course, I mean, I will not talk about too much about infrastructure because there are different games in that part. But there are different dynamics in infrastructure. But otherwise, anyways, infrastructure is not part of, I mean, a significant part of our GDP. Right? Services is, and manufacturing also. So unchecked power, I think as a concept, it is deluding concept. Right? It doesn't stay for long.
So you're talking like that. So one is you're presenting a very balanced sort of opinion that it is the fair competition matters. If it wouldn't have mattered, then you wouldn't have seen entrepreneurs coming from nowhere and rising to the top. That's one. And other thing is trying to say that maybe if you ally and put in the right kind of network and alliances, then you can sort of do very well. And the fact that big players die down, it is a case of maybe there is something which is working very well and it's still not unchecked, so as to speak. So coming to you, Param, and do you see that the unchecked power has increased recently, last 3-4 years, and do you think that organizations have to deal with it a little differently? If I to borrow his words, it's a non-market rather. It's not a competition is not happening in the market. Competition is happening beyond the market, right? Are you seeing some observation from your company or from your industry or life in general?
Absolutely, and similar to Lalit, I'm also from the consulting industry, so the views are personal. But coming to this, I would actually answer your question with a slightly different perspective. I think what we have been talking till now is about the conventional unchecked power being competition. The reality today is specifically in this world of AI, in the way technology is evolving today, it's not the competition, but it's the players on which you have dependencies who are actually getting more powerful. You talk about companies which are managing your technology platform. You talk about companies which are managing your data. You talk about companies which are managing your customer experience. That's where the power is actually getting unchecked. You think about the fact that your marketplace is where you are selling a product, but you are not controlling that marketplace. You are just creating your product. Talk about the fact that there's a company having huge amount of data insights coming about your customers, but they filter it out for you. So I think more than the competition, the world has become so much democratic today that there's so much of a dependency on various players coming involved. As someone who's very closely, personally and professionally invested into the AI industry, if you look at it right now, Anthropic has an investment in Google. Google has an investment in Anthropic. Amazon has an investment in OpenAI. OpenAI has an investment in NVIDIA. So it's almost like everybody is trying to have this entanglement coming in with the right kind of business models which you can use. So just now you would have heard about the deal which is being signed between Google and Anthropic, in which Anthropic is going to use their TPUs. You look at the valuations, they are running into thousands of dollars right now. Now, one might argue on the face of it that Google has Gemini. Why is it investing in Anthropic and so on? But then you think about it, the game for AI has actually shifted to the infrastructure layer now. Because the kind of computational power that you need, you can't simply have the interface coming in. Now, just imagine if there are 1 or 2 companies who are controlling all the infrastructure layer for AI and AI getting the future, that's where the power comes in. Similar to that, we look at e-commerce platforms. So I think the first point is to look at power differently. And to answer your question, yes, this is something which is being very, very closely observed by a lot of organizations. In fact, a lot of clients that we are going in today, rather than asking us, okay, from where's my next growth spurt going to come in and how do I stay competitive, what they are actually asking is how do I build a muscle to manage the changes which are going to come our way. Like one of the research that we did is around 83% of the clients at the CXO level believe that the intensity of change is going to increase in 2026 because of AI. But if you ask them what percentage are actually ready to cope up with it, they say our employees are only 30 to 40% ready to cope up with it. So it's a very well-known fact that it's coming in. And yeah, organizations are feeling it, but the traditional sources of power have shifted. And what's the most interesting thing is, you mentioned that power is taken or given. You mentioned something like that, right? Given. So the thing is, the reality today is that it's actually given much more before it gets visible to you. So the thing is, you have already given the power to someone by giving them that kind of a dependency of your business. It only gets visible later on because at that time you are stuck in that whole loop. So the key is, and I think for you specifically when you're talking about scaling your future people in your MBA courses and making them future leaders, it's not gonna be that traditional wisdom about how do you beat the competition, how do you bring the better product in the market, how do you do that. It's gonna be how do you orchestrate that ecosystem to make sure that your dependency is spread out. You're not really going in with such a partnership that may come and bite you tomorrow. And at the same time, thinking very strategically about from where are the sources of power which are going to come in. So the whole dynamics of competition also shift accordingly with this power. That's what I think.
So you're trying to say that, oh, because of the dependency, there are chances of choke points for a company. So the way to avoid that is to make
Exactly.
alliances and increase dependencies. And
Identifying choke points earlier, trying to cut them down at the initial stage itself to a more reasonable amount. See, the reality is you will not be able to survive without them, but that cognizance of the fact that you don't want a dependency to become so big that it starts controlling your moat or overall the business model, that's the realization that leaders of future will need to have.